Hello and welcome to ACS Golf and this week's review, where I'm looking at a legendary driver. When it first came out, it made waves in the market because it put Cobra right up near the top with the other major manufacturers, and at the time it came in at a slightly lower price than all the big guys, but performed just as well. And it is this. It is the Cobra F9 Speedback driver from 2019. Now, I've always wanted to give this driver a go for the channel because I'm a huge fan of Cobra. I played the Dark Speed last year. You know, I always generally have a Cobra club in my bag. Randomly this year it's a putter. Not exactly what you'd think when you think of Cobra, but it is this year. You know, and I've always wanted to try this driver because I never have. You know, I've done the LTDX, I've done the Aerojet, I've done the Dark Speed, done the DS Adapt. I'm doing the DS Adapt 10K Max in a couple of weeks reviewing for you guys, you know. So I've really done a lot of Cobra drivers. I've done the LTD as well, but I haven't done the F9. I feel like it's by time that I do it to see if it's still worth having a go on the second-hand market. Now, if you're new to my channel, I've actually already released a video with this. I put up against my, well, the Dark Speed X from last year, pretty much exactly the same model, but obviously newer. So do check out the channel to see which club won that, if it was the F9 or if the Dark Speed X, which you would think would naturally, when it being a newer driver, it came out on top. So that's a great watch. So do check out the channel for that. But today it is the in-depth review of this, where I'm going to discuss all the technology about it, get down to the range, and figures of you, go through the whole ACS Golf scale in detail, and discuss at the end if it's worth picking up or not, and also potentially what you need to look out for if you are thinking of picking up this driver, because Cobra a few years later did re-release it. But they re-released it with a difference which definitely affects the quality of it. But we'll discuss that at the end of the video. All right, without further ado, as always, let's have a closer look at this club. So there you go, and it is a good looking thing, isn't it? I really like the look of it. I love the yellow. There was another version, a white version, that looked really cool as well. I did mention actually in the Versus video that it had a blue version. Don't think I've ever seen a blue version of it. I was thinking of the LTDX when I mentioned that, so I do apologize for that if you've watched that video as well. But yeah, there is a white version out there that does look very good, where just this yellow is white, but it is a good looking thing. You know, good shape with it, really enjoying the shape of it. Maybe not too much to top, a little bit busy. I'm not a huge fan of gloss tops, definitely prefer matte when it comes down to it. But let's get into the technology that's in this club. So the Cobra F9 Speedback driver achieved true optimization of aerodynamics and a low center of gravity to deliver a longer and faster driver. It's one thing that Cobra have been doing for years, aerodynamics, aerodynamics, aerodynamics. They love it. They absolutely love it. It's their main sort of bread and butter, I'd say. The whole point of the Aerojet, the Dark Speed, you know, this swinging faster, that's the way to increase that ball speed. The combination of efficient aerodynamic shape, which you do have here, with the sort of turbulator-esque on top, a little bit like, you know, your pings on the top here. So efficient aerodynamic shape and an engineered weight structure on the sole improves club head speed while maintaining a low, deep CG to create the most efficient energy transfer to the ball. So you've even got like this sort of, you know, I forgot what TaylorMade call it, but inertia generator, I think it's called, you know, with that sort of little V on the bottom there again, you know, all about aerodynamics there. It's the whole point of this sort of speed back as well. You have a CNC milled, precision milled face. It allows a thinner and hotter face design to increase ball speed up to 1.5 miles per hour when tested against a traditional hand polished face. So you have CNC milled face there. There you go. Try and show you that without the focus of the video coming out. Back in winter now, in the, well, autumn in the UK, so I'm now filming with lights all around me rather than natural light coming in. So I do tend to find these sort of videos sometimes come out and out of focus, so I do apologise for that. Can't notice it myself. Probably need to get glasses, but I definitely think it does. But anyway, moving on. So yeah, so without losing focus, there you go. CNC milled face there, which I was a big fan of for Cobra. I really enjoyed the feel of the LTDX, I also played, to be honest. And when they got rid of it for the hot face, I was a little bit disappointed because they're like, well, we don't need it anymore. We've got the hot face. We don't need the CNC milled. It was like, well, if the CNC milled work, why not have it on top of the hot face? Double up the tech. But clearly not. And the reason about the CNC milled is the reason why potentially you need to be careful buying this as well, which I will again say at the end. But yeah, CNC milled face there to increase that ball speed across the face and increase that forgiveness. You've also got an ultra lightweight carbon wrap design. It has a larger, well, 12% larger carbon fiber area, 10 grams of weight compared to titanium crown driver. So basically we've got carbon on the top, which sort of wraps around the bottom here, with the idea it's saving 10 grams over using titanium. And they've obviously been able to reposition that to get the CG the way they want it, to get the MOI they want it, etc. Nowadays, obviously, all drivers are just pretty much nearly all carbon. I mean, TaylorMade even have a carbon face. You know, so I think the more recent models, you know, you have carbon on the bottom as well. With this, you don't. You just have that sort of carbon fly wrap, very much like your new Pings. Actually, even Ping now are starting to use carbon when they never did. And then you've got this strategically placed power ridges, which add rigidity to the carbon crown structure, creating more energy return, and more power to the ball to maximize speed and distance. So actually, these are carbon ridges. I thought they were aerodynamics. I think they obviously are part aerodynamics as well. But the idea there is to keep that carbon top strong to help with rigidity, as I mentioned, to obviously help with ball speed. Also, what you have with this is you had an adjustment. You could go up by 1.5, down by 1.5, which is really good. Obviously now they have the whole new DS Adapt range, which is amazing. So many different changes, but this was very much up and down. And then you have the two movable weights, where you could have a 14 gram weight at the back, which says high. So the idea that it launches the ball higher, also increases MOI. So those off hits, you know, it tends to stay a little bit straighter. Or you could move that 14 gram weight, definitely not 14K, 14 gram weight to the front and put that 2 gram at the back, you know, therefore it's at the front, then the CG, you know, is right at the front of that face. So suddenly this becomes, well, changes from a high launching, high MOI, probably relatively a little bit higher spinning club, to suddenly a low spinning, lower MOI club, because obviously the weight's all at the front, you know, and low launching as well for those piercing, big old hits from someone who's got a quicker swing speed. So, you know, rather this year when they releasing all these other drivers, Cobra just went, okay, here you go. This is your one driver. If you've got a high swing speed, stick it at the front. You know, if you're a good player, stick it at the front. If you're a bad player and you need some MOI and a bit more spin, stick it at the back. You know, it just means you could really adapt this to you. Nowadays, obviously, don't get me wrong, you do still have, you know, the X version, which is very similar to this, but then you have, you know, those ultra low spin drivers where you have more movable weight in them. But at the time, you know, this was great. And to be honest, you're looking at it nowadays and, you know, thinking of the DS Adapt X, the majority of people play the DS Adapt X because you can adjust it to how you need to do it. So why do we have all these models nowadays? I don't know, more option, I guess. But yeah, you know, really, this is it. In my mind, this is the type of driver for everyone, you know, because you can change it the way you need to and get it to perform the way you want to, which also is why a fitting is very important. But there you go. Anyway, let's move on because I'm definitely rambling on here. So without further ado, let's get down to the range on a very blustery day, unfortunately, in my face, which is slightly annoying. But we'll go through the results and then we'll come back here for the ACS Golf Scale. All right, see you in a bit. Here I'm down at the range on that blustery day. You know, always interesting in the UK. Never know exactly what weather you're going to get when you go down to test these clubs. But anyway, let's jump into those figures. So on average, I had a carry of 247 yards, total distance of 261 yards, ball speed 157 miles per hour, launch angle 11 degrees and height 96 feet. Longest on the day was 267 yards, total distance and a ball speed 160 miles per hour. Actually hit that quite a few times, actually, surprisingly. And the shortest was 251 yards, total distance and a ball speed of 103 153 miles per hour, so a little bit of a drop off there. Consistency wise was pretty consistent, not necessarily a bit left and right, you know, relatively same shot shape every single time. Maybe a few off hits were sort of maybe pushed to a left a little bit more than I'd like, to be honest. Feel wise, felt quite nice off the face, maybe struggled a little bit to know where my hits were, and not necessarily as quite nice as some of the more newer Cobra clubs, but overall really happy. And I hope you enjoyed me really going for it then on the last shot where I nearly fell over, which happens quite a lot actually in these videos. But anyway, here's the numbers on a table for you guys. So yeah, pretty happy with the longest, you know, in this sort of weather. You know, normally that would be probably an extra 10 yards on that. So, you know, pleased with the consistency and performance of this driver. You know, it's not bad at all. It really does keep on stacking up against the big boys, even though it's a bit older. So on the day, really not bad results at all, to be fair. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is going to be the longest. You know, this is very much your middle range driver for all, as I mentioned already. You know, this isn't, even with that weight in the front, going to be a low spin absolute monster bomber. You know, that's why they do have those low spin models nowadays, to really decrease it. So I'm not expecting it to be the longest, but definitely around your sort of core drivers. For the majority of people, as this is, you know, it performed exactly how to expect a brand new one to perform. You know, one that has just been released this year, you know, such as my TaylorMade QI35, changeable weights. You know, it performs very much similar. You know, I also took down the 10K Max at the time, which is actually one of the longer, sort of more forgiving drivers of the year, and didn't beat it for distance. And we all know, well, I'm not going to ruin the results for the dark speed, so check out the channel for that, but you might be in a pleasant surprise there. So yeah, with wind in the face, 247 yards, carry 261 yards, total distance, ball speed 157 miles per hour. You know, happy with that. Top that 160, maybe a 1 or 2 miles per hour slower than sort of what I'm getting out with the brand new clubs, but that's really nothing, to be fair. You know, because if you don't get the right launch angle, the right spin or whatever, 2 miles per hour is not going to help you. So it needs to all be correct. Launch angle 11 was good, and height 96 feet, you know, with the longest on the day, maxing out at that 267, which I got a few times that actually. Moving the weight, so swapping the weight around, definitely saw a lower launch that came out. Ball speed relatively stayed the same, and the, you know, distance a little bit lower, but it still rolled out to relatively the same as well. So not a huge difference I noticed, but I did test it the majority with it at the back. I'm sure if I really, you know, kept on doing it front, then I think you'd probably find that it's getting a little bit, I would have got a little bit more distance from that. However, it definitely did decrease the forgiveness. So yeah, so moving it forward definitely would increase it, that distance, even though, you know, the few shots I hit, they're relatively the same, but with this lower launch. But I definitely did notice the forgiveness did drop off by doing that, as you would expect. So let's get into the ACS Golf scale. So remember, we've got 5 categories: got distance, feel, looks, price, and forgiveness. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. Now, for me, for a core driver to perform as any other core driver out at the moment, it's not going to be a 5, because a 5, well, it could be a 5, and then it's like the longest core driver ever. But you know, 5 for me is those low spins. 4.5 is those low spins. For me, a core driver is around 3.5 to 4 if it's in the sort of categories you'd expect from a brand new club. Because you've got to remember now, this is 6 years old, so it's not, you know, not that young at all. But however, for me, I always say, you look around 2016, that's where they sort of hit the peak when it came down to these things. And that's why they're all about talking about, you know, feel, sound, etc. You know, trying to get aerodynamics up to increase the swing speed, to get the ball going further. Not because the club is, because you are, by swinging faster. So yeah, that's why they always talk about aerodynamics. Oh, you've hit this 10 yards faster. It's like, well, because you're swinging faster. But anyway, which is down to club, yes, aerodynamics. So yeah, might have contradicted myself a little bit there. But anyway, let's move on. So yeah, so 3.5 to 4, and I'm putting this in 4. I can't deny that it can't be in 4. So that's along with my QI35, that's along with the dark speed, that's along with a lot of other core drivers that I reviewed over the years and past years. It's up there, it's 4. Do I think it's as long as my QI35? No, I think my QI35 would beat this. However, I do think, you know, it's definitely not that far off still. You know, it wasn't far off. I think it was the M6 in 2019. You know, it wasn't that far off that. You know, it's it's really up there still. So 4 out of 5. Definitely not going to be the longest out of that category in the 4s there. Probably down to maybe the shorter one in the 4 out of 5 category, but it's definitely up there for distance. You're not going to really notice it on the course. You're going to be really happy with it still. Really happy with the distance. So there you go. Moving on to feel. Feel like I'm in at 3.5. A little bit disappointed with the feel. You know, the LTDX felt lovely. You know, for me nowadays, I think some of the best feeling like woods are Cobras, along with your Titleists and Mizunos. For me, they are sort of the better feeling ones, just from my perspective, really. This didn't quite stack up. Still nice, 3.5. Nothing bad about it. But you know, I was hitting the dark speed when I was testing this, and I just felt the dark speed just felt a little bit more punchy off the face, a little bit more powerful. So when I got back and checked the results, there's a little bit of spoiler here for you, by the way, but when I checked the results, a little bit shocked, to be fair, because it just felt a little bit more lively off the face than this, which is not the end of the world. Knew relatively where my miss hits were, but yeah, just doesn't necessarily give the same pop as your more modern one. But yeah, 3.5, not the end of the world, just down to my feel. I mean, I'm sure some people try this and think it's the best feeling driver in the world, so there you go. On to looks, 4 out of 5 for looks. Love the bottom of it. I think it looks really smart, really good shape still. You know, it's from the days where they weren't trying to elongate everything out the back, which I'm not a huge fan of, to be fair. It's the only problem with my QI35. It's just such a big profile there, so trying to maximize that MOI. I mean, get as many, like your core drivers close to 10 as possible, not just your most forgiving ones out there. So I really like the shape of it. Just not a huge fan of the top. A little bit busy for me with those sort of, you know, those ribs there and everything on top of it. So yeah, so 4 out of 5 for me. Moving on to forgiveness. Forgiveness, I've given this a 3.5 out of 5. Again, a core sort of would be 3.5 up to 4. Plenty of forgiveness still in this. Definitely, especially with that weight at the back. If you put that weight at the front, then it's probably dropping down to 3. Maybe a little bit lower because you are having a lot more weight at the front of this head, which is going to affect the MOI. But at the back, 3.5 out of 5. You know, there's plenty of forgiveness in this for your average golfer. There really, really is. And I mean, the shortest on the day, ball speed did drop down to 153, but you know, 240 yards still carry, 251 yards so distance, you know, really happy about that, to be fair. So yeah, so even there was a little bit of a ball speed drop off, yeah, 3.5 out of 5. Don't think it's quite as forgiving as, say, the QI35. Well, I know it's not as forgiving as the QI35, not maybe as forgiving as the Dark Speed X. You know, I just feel like I lost it a little bit more with this, but still, as I mentioned, plenty of forgiveness there. 3.5 out of 5 for that weight at the back. Definitely enough for your average golfer to go out and play with it and really, really enjoy it. If you're a really, really high handicap and you really, really struggle with your driver, then I would suggest, to be honest, looking at a ping. That's always the way I say, because they're maximum MOI, you know, and they'll keep you on the fairway more, while this is more your all-rounder. So yeah, so 3.5, not bad at all. Now on to price. The price is a bit of a tricky one with this because it is so thought of, so highly thought of. It is still really, really popular on the second-hand market, and rightly so. You know, I've just shown you the performance of it. It still stacks up to modern day clubs. It's iconic and it gives you all the adjustability you need. So really, really not surprised by it. But, you know, on Golf Bidder, which is second-hand market in the UK, you're looking around 171 pounds, sorry, which is around $230. On eBay, it ranges. I've seen them go to around £150 all the way up to £190. So that's like $215 all the way up to like sort of $260. That's quite a lot. Not because it's not worth it, no, but because there's actually other Cobra drivers you can get which are newer for cheaper. This matches off against the LTDX, which I was a huge fan of. Don't get me wrong, you don't have the movable weight here on the standard LTX model. You just have a big weight at the back. You've got the model after this, the Rad Speed, which is a great driver. Tend to be a little bit cheaper than this. The Aerojet, again, tend to be a little bit cheaper than this. There's a lot of drivers out there from Cobra after this that just tend to be a little bit cheaper. And believe me, they perform just as well. Cobra didn't suddenly lose the plot one year. The next year, didn't bring, you know, make a fantastic driver, and the next year make it worse. Maybe with the Aerojet, I'm not a huge fan of the Aerojet. I feel like maybe it was a little bit of a step down from the LTDX. I'll put my hand up with that. Performance, maybe not, but everything about it just wasn't a fan of the Aerojet. But still, you know, there's lots of other ones out there cheaper than this. And then you can obviously go down the tailor-made route and all that sort of stuff. So for me, price, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Not the end of the world. You know, still, I think, you know, still a bargain when you compare going to pick up a brand new one, a brand new Cobra or brand new TaylorMade, etc. You know, you're just going to get just as much distance with this, just maybe a little bit lax of forgiveness, and definitely enough adjustability to sink a battleship. But it's just the fact that the Cobras and there's other clubs that I know are newer are going to come in a little cheaper than it. That's why I've given it a 3 out of 5, and I just can't give it higher than that because it is holding its value really, really well. So there you go. All right, so now we've gone through the ACS Golf scale. Before I give you my conclusion, well, I will give you my conclusion actually. Fantastic club. If you want to go and try it, go and try it. It is a fantastic club, and you won't be disappointed. Now, on to the issue though with this when trying to buy it on the second-hand market, and there's a big one. So a couple of years later, because Cobra knew these were so popular, they re-released them in sort of this package set. However, they removed this CNC milled facing because it costs too much to produce it and keep it even cheaper than it was before. So more people go out and buy it, you know, bring the savings on to the customer. They removed the CNC milled facing to save money, and that affected the performance massively. And I think it was the Cobra F9 Speedback S performs nowhere near as good as this because it doesn't have that CNC milled facing. So if you're buying this in the second-hand market, make sure you see that CNC milled facing on the front, because if it's a Speedback S, avoid it. It's not that good. It's nowhere near as good as this. So there you go. Be careful when buying this club on the second-hand market. Make sure it is an original F9 and not the re-release one a couple of years later. All right, guys, now I hope you enjoyed this review of the Cobra F9 driver Speedback. Amazing driver, as you'd expect, really stacks up still against the big guys, and definitely worth a go if you're looking for it in the second-hand market. So there you go. Do comment down below if you played one of these, you know, and if you are still playing it, I'd love to know. And do give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and do also remember to subscribe to the channel for weekly ACS Golf reviews and more. All right, guys, I'll see you soon for the next video. See you then. Bye-bye.